We continue our journey in the adult education program of Grace United Methodist Church in Winfield, Kansas. This week is our second week of exploring the promises of prayer. Certainly, prayer has its perils and dangers. Prayer can be a cop-out. Prayer can be a badge. Prayer can be an effort to be justified by works. But on the other side, prayer is an experience of fulfilled promises in our journey of faith. The first promise we experienced and explored last week was the promise of connection with the divine. This week we're exploring the second of the three C's, the promise of community. Now, the foundation of this understanding that community is a necessary component of faith is a conversation with one of my mentors. Emilio was born in Angola, received his higher education in the United States, returned to Angola, only to be imprisoned by the Portuguese for advocating freedom from the colonial control of his people. He lived in the U.S. for several years, and while here, he experienced the life of the church in the United States. The church in Angola was growing in mission and in numbers by leaps and bounds. The church in the U.S. was struggling to just maintain its strength. I asked Emilio, what's the difference between the church in Angola and the church in the U.S.? He paused, he thought, and he replied, you sing I songs, we sing we songs. For 30 years, that reply has been foremost in my mind. For me, it speaks to a weakness in our witness and life together. As an illustration, think about the difference between singing, Here I am, Lord, will you send me? And here we are, Lord, will you send us? Think about the difference between I will go, Lord, and we will go, Lord. See, the difference is between the journey of faith being the journey of an individual as over against a journey of the community. It reinforces what we referred to last week, that the mental health professional shared with me that the two essential ingredients for mental health were connection and community. I think these two are also essential ingredients for spiritual health. As we explore the promises of prayer, the experience of experiencing the promise of community is a powerful component of our life of prayer. Jesus taught about this component of being on the journey of faith as a community rather than an individual trip. One time he said, where two or three are gathered, there I am with you. He didn't say, when you're alone, I'm with you. He said, where two or three are gathered. You see, the first disciples were invited to be a part of the journey of a community of disciples, not a trip alone. The importance of community in our experience of prayer is a promise to be experienced and a promise to be cherished. Now, one of the common experiences of the promise of community and prayer is the liturgy of the church. Now, some of us are attracted to liturgy, more than others. But whether or not you're attracted or sort of put off by liturgy, we have to admit that liturgy is a bonding experience among the faithful. To be praying alongside, with, and for each other is the experience that we're not on this journey alone. It's a journey of singing we songs, not I songs. Now, others of us are reserved about the liturgical practices in the life of the church. And when we're reserved about this, we often must remember that sometimes the repetitive nature of liturgical prayer can lose its meaning. However, often a community without liturgy can become one in which little is held in common and everyone goes their own way. A good example of liturgical prayer is the prayer of confession. It's a prayer when we fess up of our shortcomings and walking the journey of divine love. But to fess up together means that we're in this struggle together and community is discovered even in a prayer of confession. You know, in our day where division reigns, even within faith communities, division reigns. So therefore, the importance of community is so relevant and so important. One time I was a one-time visitor in a local church, 1,000 miles away from where I lived. I left that experience with a renewed sense of faith because I experienced community in that place, even as a one-time visitor. Including in that experience of community was the experience of prayer. For the first time that I experienced the pastoral prayer was written to be prayed by the congregation in unison. That was different. And that was experiencing the promise of community. The invitation to pray the Lord's Prayer was that it was a gift from Jesus to the community. It was our prayer, not just my prayer. The liturgy of the benediction was a responsive blessing given to each other, one side of the congregation to the other, responding to each other in blessing each other. You see, as a one-time visitor, the promise of community was kept in the prayer life of that congregation. They sang we songs, not I songs. They prayed we prayer, not I prayer. As a child, I worshiped in what was then a Methodist church that had a tradition of celebrating the sacrament by passing the elements to each other in the pew. Now, I'm not making the case of one practice of distributing the elements over against the other. But what I do know is that the promise of discovering community is different when a partner in the pew passes the elements to me and says, for the forgiveness of your sins, than when I, as a leader in worship, would say those words to everyone. You see, prayer includes the promise of we-ness, community. Finally, all of us have had the experience of being prayed for or praying for others in smooth times or rough times. Specific requests or general blessings of intercession or thanksgiving are common in the community of faith. Regardless of whether prayer is experience of being answered, in these experiences, community is always found. Let me say that again. Regardless of whether we experience that prayer is answered, in these experiences of praying for another, community is always discovered. Yeah. In summary, one of the promises of prayer is the experience of community. For in the journey of faith, we is more important than I. For your thought and conversation, a couple questions. In your journey of faith, have you experienced the priority of congregational life as we or I? And what are your experiences when collective prayers together have been meaningful and life-changing? Thanks for being a part of our journey, discovering the promises of prayer.